last presentation, I was exploring the importance of transparency in building a viable and sustaining marriage. Uh, I thought I had finished. I remember saying something about moving on towards the end of my lecture last time. And then I realized I left something dangling that I wanted to pursue. So I'm going to put an add-on on what I talked about last time. Uh, I have more to say about the issue of transparency. Uh, there is a time when transparency becomes even more critical than it is ordinarily in marriages. That is the special case of a marriage that is temporarily in wreckage because one of the partners has discovered that the other partner has been unfaithful. Uh, Already, it's obvious that there are very few marriages in which person A is at home and person B says, well, I've made a connection with an affair partner and I'm not going to be home this evening because I'm going to be with my affair partner. I imagine since almost anything that human beings can do, somebody is doing that somewhere at this moment, but that's very rare. So affairs, almost by definition, are taking place with an alteration of the transparency between the two members. One of the members of the pair is beginning to accumulate all kinds of secrets. When the affair is discovered or when the affair is confessed to, there is a tremendous hurt and disruption that takes place in the relationship. And the very specialness of the relationship, that is, our relationship is one in which we are intimate with each other powerfully and to a much greater degree than we are with anyone else. We share our secrets with each other. We talk to each other openly about whatever it is we're experiencing and needs to be attended to by us as a partnership. That process is being broken, and now there's a third person to whom one of them is saying a lot and carrying secrets with that person and away from the person that's supposed to be the person with whom they have no secrets. So the disruption is very painful. The person who feels betrayed feels betrayed precisely because he or she no longer occupies that position. I am the one with whom you share everything. Now that person is falling down the ladder rapidly to a lower position. The affair partner is the one who's preferred. I owe a lot to what I'm about to talk about to a colleague of mine named Shirley Glass, who spent a lot of time working with couples in the aftermath of the discovery of an affair. And Shirley wrote a book called Not Just Friends, because that's usually the frequent excuse of the person who's been discovered to have been unfaithful. The excuse is, well, I didn't really have an affair with that person. We're just friends. Uh, Unfortunately, they're special friends, and there are secrets that those two have that is not being shared with the partner who's at home. Be that as it may, Shirley talks about the problems of trying to repair the damage that's been done to the intimate bond and to the issue of transparency. So let me detour into this with some statistics. For those of us who work in this field, it's not unlikely that we're going to have many clients who come in around the issue of infidelity. The statistics are not very encouraging to people who believe in monogamous lifelong marriages. About 56% of men who are in long-term relationships and long-term marriages wind up between the time the marriage is made and when they finally die, wind up having at least one affair partner. And about 48% of the women in long-term marriages. The statistics a little bit less, but not shockingly less. 48% of women who are in long-term marital relationships at some time over their lifespan will have a love affair. Uh, there is a kind of common parlance that it's men who wander and it's men who can't be trusted and it's men who will be unfaithful. The statistics only bear out that there's a slight tendency for more men to do it than women. But my God, if the men are out having affairs with somebody, who are the women they're having affairs with? They're likely to be married women just as they are married men. So let us not tar men with that terrible brush. Men are always unfaithful and women are always devoted, because that's a nonsensical rule and it isn't true at all. The data don't bear that out. Uh, so Shirley goes on not only to quote the statistics on likelihood, but to talk about repair. And she said that often this is really such a bitter pill that the couple cannot get beyond it. I will describe some of the early swirling that goes on around hurt and pain and accusations and difficulty, but many couples cannot get beyond that, and they feel like the only resolution, the only way they can heal is actually to get divorced and clean the slate and start over again. That's about 80% of the marriages in which there's been infidelity. They wind up in the divorce courts, not necessarily right at the time, soon after it happens, but over the next 5-year period, 80% of people who are living through that with great pain will wind up in the divorce courts. Of the 20% left behind, only a smaller percentage of that 20% actually heals, moves beyond it, and it's almost as if a bone had been broken. So for some of us who break bones, the knit bone is actually stronger than the broken bone ever was before it got broken. That's very unusual. Shirley tried to help people achieve that outcome after their repair crashed and had to be reconstructed. But we have to worry about whether that happens. So in that 20% of a lot of people who are permanently having a bad, a disappointing, a hurting relationship, they just continue to live together for practical reasons ongoing, but the life and the vitality and the goodness has broken out of the marriage and has not been able to be repaired. As Thoreau said, they become among the men who are living lives of quiet desperation. So what has to happen to make the repair possible? Shirley uses the metaphors of walls and windows. In a vibrant and functioning marriage, the two people live within a structure, and there are many windows that they look through to see other things. They can look into the windows of their children and see what's going on there. They look into the windows of the world and see about events happening in the world. But there are no walls that separate them from each other, and they don't need windows in between each other because they're sharing a common space. When the affair begins, that shifts. The affair partner is now partly in another room, only visiting with the partner that they think they're with all the time. And if they were to see what's going on, they'd have to find a window somewhere where they could look through the wall that's been put up, because the affair partner does not want to be discovered, does not want the affair to end, at least not in the beginning, certainly, and is creating secrets and putting walls in place. So now the one left behind is not in a position of occupying a common space with the person having the affair, but is increasingly being walled out of a space that the affair partner is coming to take up. So what has to happen is, and it can be quite dramatic, that has to change quickly. The wall that separates now the affair partner from the person who's being left behind, that wall has to be cracked and broken open so that the secrets of the affair go away, and a new wall has to be built between the person who had the affair and the affair partner. The affair partner has to wind up on the outside, and hopefully even without a window, so the affair partner totally disappears out of the life of the one with whom the affair has taken place. This is a tremendous change, a tremendous period of chaos, hurt, dislocation of three people, and great agony that three people are going through as this wreckage has to be reconstructed in a different way. So for the person who has been the one who's created the affair, the best way that he or she can begin to be healing to the spouse is in at least a couple parts. Part A, to absolutely stop and cut off the affair, tell the affair partner that he or she is moving on, that their relationship is over, and he or she is never going to be in contact with them again. To put a firm wall in place and to end it as if the person had died. And the second thing that has to happen is even more attention than in ordinary life has to be paid to transparency. The poor partner left behind is really hurting terribly about many things. He or she is filled with all kinds of imagined imagery about what must have went on between these two. And often the images that partner has, the one left behind, are far more painful and really corrodes the soul far worse than what the actual reality is. So the person committing the affair has to find the courage somehow, even though the process is bruising, to be totally frank and totally honest about everything about which the one left behind is now preoccupied. Here, I wrote down some kinds of common questions. Did you complain about me to your affair partner? If you did, what were the complaints that you complained about me? What were my shortcomings? How did I fail you? What were you telling your affair partner I was not providing for you? And boy, is that a lacerating conversation to have between two people. Uh, what did you enjoy about sex with your affair partner? Were there any favorite ways you had sex? How often did you have sex with that person? There's often a specific curiosity about what was the nature and content of the sexual liaisons between the two who were having the affair. And it hurts like hell for the one who's asked the question to hear every detail of the answers, but they should be provided anyhow. The only way that trust can be restored, I'll anticipate myself, is if the person who's been betrayed knows that he or she is now hearing the truth. Painful as it is the truth. And she can begin to put some credence into the words that are being said to her now, because for such a long period of time when the affair was going on, he or she couldn't put any credence into any kind of thing that she was hearing from her partner. How often did you have sex? Did you ever talk to that person about leaving me and marrying him or her? Did you tell him that you were in love with him or her? These are the kinds of questions that come pouring out because the partner at home has been daydreaming about the terrible answers to all those questions. And at the time they're being asked for, he or she is hurting so badly every time she gets the truth. It just is lacerating. Now, there should be no further privacy kept by the person who's committed the affair. If the one at home wants to monitor all electronic devices, see all emails that are coming in, read all text messages from anybody that are being received, that privilege should be granted. There should be no devices that are locked out and kept away from the person who's been hurt. After a while, I've had some successful outcomes in cases like this. It gets boring to keep looking, and the looking will stop after a while when security begins to flow again, and the non-finding of anything becomes the rule, and the relaxation begins to take place. But the path from here to there is very painful. There are other things that get tried on. I need to talk to your affair partner. Give me contact information so I can get in touch with that person. Absolutely provide the contact information and let the spouse who's been hurt get in touch with the other person. Yell at her, talk to her, him, commiserate with them, whatever needs to go on. Yell at them, stay away from my spouse, whatever it is that the person at home wants to do. Gradually, the person who's been wronged can begin to have a voice other than the voice of the comforter, the voice of the reassurer, and the voice of one who's trying to make atonement. Because during the period of time leading to the divorce and in the aftermath of the divorce and while the divorce was going on, the person who's had the divorce was partly demonizing the partner, was focusing on all the things that were dissatisfying, unresolved, problematic, and was wallowing in those and sharing those with the affair partner because that gave some kind of moral justification for having the affair. And in the aftermath, when all this lacerating conversation is going on, the one who is the betrayer wants to bring up all those things and say, well, you have to understand I was suffering from, and wants to start enumerating the things that he or she was suffering from. That is no good. That person does not get a turn at the table until the one who's been betrayed has calmed down significantly and can begin to work, and a real decision has been made. We need to pay attention to everything about our marriage. And if you have some things that can be called into question and need to be addressed to, I am getting ready to do that. If you try doing that prematurely, the person who's been betrayed will feel like this is a contest about whose pain has been the worst. And the betrayer wants me to be attentive to his or her pain. Fuck him. What the hell? He destroyed me and I should be attentive to what he's unhappy about. He can go choke on it. That's timing is everything in this process. So it takes real stoicism, kindness, devotion, and a willingness to pay a heavy human price in suffering to restore the marriage and to try to turn it into something good again, or maybe even better than it was before it got broken. So I think that takes care of the kinds of things I wanted to say about the transparency needs of a couple who have been through the horrors of discovering an infidelity. And I think I will rest for a moment. Why don't you guys unmute yourself? If you want to talk about that topic for a few seconds, that would be fine. And then I'll go on for my topic of the day.
I was thinking about kind of like when you were talking, Arthur, about the truth setting you free.
Yeah.
You know, if someone is kind of like asking all the kind of questions of the details of the affair and this and that, and where did you go and what did you do and things like that.
Yeah. How often did you see that person?
Yeah, it would seem like in some ways that it would be so thick with hurt and betrayal. How could it possibly be reversed? You know, in terms of
It doesn't get reversed. The horror of it never goes away. It just becomes less and less important. Other things come, other interests blossom, other ways of talking come to the fore again. And this is like any terrible trauma. We're in the thickness of it at the beginning, but we don't spend our whole life swimming in that swamp. We begin to attach to other preoccupations and other things. And actually, the challenging and wondrous work of how can we repair this broken marriage becomes a quest and becomes sacred and becomes precious to both members of the pair if they really care about each other.
Yeah, I usually say something like, you know, radical openness, right? To let for the person to be completely transparent, completely open, and that there's an opportunity there to try to start viewing each other as partners. You know, that as partners, if they look each other across the table and see a partner, they can get through anything. And if there isn't a partnership, they won't get through the minor things in life, let alone
the most significant case I ever was involved in that gave me really good feelings was a couple where she was screaming at him, sometimes I wish you were dead, but she was saying something over and over again in the middle of all the chaos. But I want you to know that I love you and I'm not going to divorce you. We'll get through this somehow.
Wow.
And then she was screaming at him a few minutes later after she heard the next confession. I feel like killing you now. You broke my heart. I'll never heal.
You also said in some ways that they're giving permission, you know, to go see the, you know, the person they had an affair with. I kind of imagined, okay, well, I'm going to go see the person with a gun, You know,
Yeah, that's fine. One of them wanted it was a man, a husband had betrayed her. She wanted to know if I knew how to get in touch with the affair partner's husband. And I said, yes, I knew who he was. And yes, I called her at his office once. So I have his office number, and I'll give it to you. And so I had gotten it as part of my intake process and part of my getting to know both of these people. And she just, the client cherished the daydream of getting in touch with him and ruining his marriage too, but she never did. Just having the tool that she knew how to go about proceeding with that was enough to keep her from doing it. Yes, but guns could happen.
Yeah.
Well,
What's on us as the therapist if that happens? What are we responsible?
You don't want to know.
yeah.
All right, I will now start. What is this? Chapter 6, I think.
Think so.
Yeah. Oh, here it is. Yeah, 6. Title of the chapter is 6, Rituals of Decision Making. As a couple struggles to create a partnership that gets solemnified with the marriage ceremony, but is really a living partnership to make a life with and enduringly with another human being. One of the things that has to be resolved is how are decisions to be made? Life is not static. Life is a set of ongoing, constantly emerging decisions that need to be made. From simple ones, we're out of toilet paper, go to the market and buy some toilet paper, but what brand of toilet paper are we going to buy? We have choices. To a little more complex kinds of decisions. We're in the middle of a kitchen remodel and the cabinets are going up. What kind of handles are we going to put on the cabinets? And if you go to a design store, there are probably more than 1,500 different handles you can get for kitchen cabinets. It's really, there's a surfeit of riches and craziness out there. So decisions need to be made, and it is awkward, complicated, and sometimes hurtful and difficult for couples to arrive at what the rituals are that will help their decision making. And I use the word rituals purposely. It is a crazy lack of time, energy, and effectiveness that every decision has to be treated as something new that the two people have to spend a lot of time making a decision about. God almighty, if we had to have an argument every time we went to the market about which brand of toilet paper was better, we could find an infinite number of such small things that have to be decided that we would spend all our time having disputes about what is the answer to the question of what choice should be made. And that is a very, very crazy way to live. It is in line with a romantic notion that I think young couples particularly tend to have. I don't know how it gets poured into them. They actually believe that every decision should be made jointly by the two of them and that the process should be very pleasant. They should mutually decide what to have for dinner every night. They should decide who's going to go get the stuff that they're going to purchase. They should decide when they're looking at avocados, which avocado should be bought. They should be together making, jointly looking at and involved in making every decision that has to be made that makes the textures of their life happen. And from my perspective, that's just impossible. That is beyond ridiculous. So any couples who struggle with each other, having to make ongoing decisions, will find that some rituals that I will describe are really helpful to create. So now I'll switch metaphors to one of the favorite metaphors that occurred to me once when I was in my 50s, listening to a couple bicker. what I thought of, and I wound up talking to them about what I had imagined. I found myself thinking about Alaskan husky dogs. Uh, in a state of nature, there are wild packs of huskies living on the Alaskan tundra. And if you're a pack animal, you are in the pack parts of the time, but then you separate from the pack for intervals when might see a bird in the distance and want to go chase the bird. So you get out of where the pack is swirling and run over to bark at the bird, chase the bird, or you need to go pee on a bush somewhere. So you leave the pack for a while and go pee on the bush, or you may run down onto the seashore and bark at a seal when you feel like doing that. So you spend many hours in the pack, but you keep separating from the pack to go on your own idiosyncratic adventures of one kind or another. That's very different than having become a domesticated dog and you are now harnessed in a trace with a second dog beside you and you're pulling a sledge somewhere. You cannot simply see a bird off to the left if you're the left-hand dog, turn left and start yanking the other dog in the sledge in the direction that you want to go to chase the bird, because you start strangling the other dog you're attached to, and you may tip over the sledge in the process. So everything has to be talked about and negotiated some way. I want to go bark at that bird. No, we should go further down the trail. It's going to get dark and we're going to get stuck in this place. It's not very nice here. Before you go bark at any birds, let's come to a resting place a couple miles from here. Everything gets talked about. And from now on, you have no full autonomy. You surrender parts of your autonomy to allow yourself to be influenced by another person and to allow yourself to take direction from another person and to allow yourself to care about the needs of another person and not just your own idiosyncratic needs. And that's the price you pay for somebody who will help you with your labors, give you companionship, hopefully give you sex that's very sweet and nice, and bring you all kinds of advantages. There is a price to be paid, and it's the partial surrender of autonomy. You cannot be fully free and be in a close relationship with another human being. You have to be open to be influenced by them. If you accept that premise and begin to live with it, what do I have written here? You will find that you need to develop rituals to contain and streamline how decisions are made. You will find that you are in decision making so frequently, even in the course of an ordinary week. You will be in the need to make decisions whenever there are choices that have to be made, and the choices flow at us periodically. You will be in decision making whenever changes have to be made. I love quoting somebody named Yogi Berra, who the younger portion of my audience probably don't even know who Yogi Berra was. He was in the maybe late 1940s, 50s, and 60s. He was a catcher for the New York Yankees, and the sports reporters loved interviewing him because he had a very colorful way of saying non sequiturs of one sort or another, and they were hilarious. One of my favorite Yogi Berra is if you come to a fork in the road, take it. That has such profound intuitive mystic wisdom. That's exactly what we have to do when we come to a fork in the road. He doesn't say anything about which is the correct fork, but if you come to a fork in the road, you have to take it. You have to make a choice about which way you're going. So let me talk about kinds of choices and what kinds of rituals evolve slowly. And by the way, nobody consciously plans doing this. It grows from us bumping into each other and being irritated and then trying to resolve what's happening and what we're irritated about. I estimate from the time a couple get serious with each other until they have their decision-making rituals in place, it's a period of somewhere between 2 and 3 years before the structure begins to float effectively and without a lot of trouble and back and forth between the two of them. here are the rituals. There are 5 different rituals. Every decision that has to be made can be put under one of these 5 rubrics. In ritual for the first ritual, partner A doesn't even want to be bothered and wishes to be left alone, and the partner B would take care of whatever needs to be decided. As an example of this, I had a couple in my office. She was complaining that she was having a lot of car trouble. She was taking it to the shop frequently, and she was bitterly saying to her husband, I need better caretaking from you. I know you're busy and I'm busy, but I hate taking my car to the shop because everybody there is sexist. I think they're trying to exploit me. They tell me a whole bunch of nonsense about what's wrong with the car, so I'll agree to have all kinds of things done. I never have a pleasant experience. And I don't like getting up in the morning and being stranded because my car doesn't want to start. You seem to know more about cars than I do. Could I ask you to take this over? She literally asked him to take it over. When I get up in the morning, I want to be able to get in the car and make sure it's going to get me where it needs to go. That means you would take responsibility for getting it serviced. I can't keep track of when I need to get it serviced or what I have to do by way of preventive maintenance. Could you be, that's how I think of men. Could you be a loving husband and do this for me? Just make sure I have a car that I can drive, and I'm not fancy. I brought this car into the marriage. It's going to get old. I'll get rid of it eventually. I don't care if I get a used car, a new car. It doesn't have to be a glamorous car. I just want safe and enduring transportation. Will you be willing to take this over? And he said, no, I want you to learn how to do that. Why should I take it over? She said, you want me to take the time to learn how to do that. Maybe I'll be motivated to do that if God forbid you die and I have nobody left to turn to, but I have no desire to learn how to do that. And would you be a kind husband and just take it over from me? I'll do things for you if it will make life easier. And they began to negotiate this. And yes, indeed, he finally agreed that she didn't have to bother herself with cars anymore. If there's a decision about is it time to sell the car, he'll make it. He'll tell her what he's doing just in case she has something she wants to say, but he'll know that this is his domain. This is his domain entirely. He can do whatever seems best to him in this domain about securing, maintaining, and continuing to have transportation for both of them. If you flip that over to the other side, this now person A wants to do everything and doesn't want person B to be involved at all, or person B wants out, doesn't want to be involved. I can think of a good example. This is a gay couple. They had been married for 10 years. They were quite a competent couple at their respective careers. He was a very well-known designer. He decorated internal spaces. He had clients all over the world. He was traveling to wealthy people in other countries, helping them design their interior spaces. And his husband was a investment counselor who was very successful with stocks, bonds, and real estate, and gave wealthy people advice about how to manage their portfolios. And they lived very nicely in a house in Bel Air. But they were in the middle of doing a redecoration. And the guy who was the space planner said, that couch we've been here, we need to get rid of it. Let's throw it out. It's no good anymore. And so the husband said, why he wanted the husband to get involved. What kind of couch you think you should put here? Let me bring home some pictures of couches, and I'd like your opinion. And I have to get fabric samples, and I'll bring some fabric samples home. And the other guy started yelling, look, this is your domain. I trust your taste. I love your taste. I have many things to do. I don't want to look at fabrics. I don't care about fabrics. I have no really aesthetic investment in whatever couch you get. Get me something comfortable. I trust you to do that. And please just buy and secure for us anything you want. It's gracious of you to offer me the opportunity to participate, but I don't want the opportunity to participate. Please, this is just an extra burden for me to have to think about this. You need me to be here when the guy comes to measure the space or pick up the couch or bring in a new couch. I don't want to have to be here. Please just take care of it and leave me alone. So that was okay. They worked that one out. So those are the extremes where one of the two of them doesn't want to be bothered by the content of the domain. There aren't many such things, but there are probably a few in every relationship. If you move in from that towards a more central place, then both of them have an opinion and both of them want some involvement. Let me see if I can think of some cases here. I think I jotted some things down. Oh, yes. Another couple, he did the family's bookkeeping, the preparation of income tax returns, and they had managed to start saving some money for their later life. So he was figuring out whether to buy some stocks, some bonds, some annuity funds. He was wrestling with investments, and his wife was not particularly interested in those contents, but she prided herself on being an emancipated woman, and she knew she wanted to know the details. So she would ask him what he was doing and to brief her about any decisions he was making about changing things or adding to things. And he would check in with her and tell her about it. She would give him his opinions, and then he would go ahead and proceed. Later on, she took to reading the business section of the LA Times every day, and she started to see about the performance of some corporations, and now she had some ideas. She came to him once, I remember, and said to him, "You know, Apple looks like it's going up, and I think it's going to continue to go up. It's coming out with a new iPhone. I think you should buy some Apple stock." And he said, "Well, I don't know." And he started giving her reasons why he thought that that was not a good idea. And they started arguing. She would say, "Yes, but," and he would argue back. And they were arguing in my office about that. And they finally came to a resolution. From my perspective, what was the proper resolution? She said, "Well, you do most of this most of the time. You haven't done bad by us. I don't know if you're making the right particular decision about this thing, but I think it's stupid for us to keep going back and forth trying to persuade the other of who's right and who's wrong. This is kind of your bailiwick. So go ahead, you make the final decision." And she left it up to him, and he refused to buy the Apple stock. Uh, so that's an example. There's lots of things that everybody wants, each of the partners wants to be heard, and they need to spend at least some time listening to each other and seeing what the differences are and seeing if they could come to a uniform decision between the two of them. But if they can't, then one of them should defer to the other, because this domain, one of them has either a little more expertise than the other does, or B, a little more personal involvement with that content than the other person does. It's part of their identity almost to be in charge of this and to be working actively with this when it's not that important to the other person. So if you can find that graciousness in you, that resolves a large number of disputes that don't have to be entered into, particularly if it's a two-way street. If both of you have domains that you are going to be the leader in, but you have a moral responsibility to treat your partner at least as a consultant. You don't necessarily have to take the consultant's advice, but you shouldn't go ahead and take their voice away from them and not give them a chance to be heard about something you're contemplating. Then that works into a very smooth system that functions very, very well after a while. Finally, there are a group of things that are really too important for there to be dissonance. This is almost like, will the war in Ukraine come to an end? Both parties, before that war comes to an end, both parties are going to have to find something that they can both agree upon before the war comes to an end. Some way out of this horrible killing that both will sign off on. Because I don't think anybody's going to defeat anybody and just destroy the other person completely. I was thinking of what the usual things are that in effect each should have veto power over the other. Nothing should go forward unless both agree. I came up with at least two easily, and then a second one fell into my lap yesterday. A third one fell into my lap yesterday. One is where people live. I think it would be a mistake to ask a partner to live in a space and spend every day of what maybe many years ahead living in a space that feels lousy to be in. There are problems with the space, there are problems with the neighborhood, there's something about the place that just doesn't feel comfortable or good to one of the partners. Don't acquire that unless it's an emergency of some kind and you can acquire it for a little while and then move on. That's not a good space to acquire. The second thing I thought of is serious decisions about things that need to be done with, to, or for a child. If there are major interventions that have to be made in a child's life of some kind, it's best if the parents can come together in a common cause and be united in that. If the parents are fighting and bickering about what the change is or is not going to be, that makes for real trouble for all three persons. So there are probably, again, not a large number of times in the life of a child where the parents have to make some decision. I can think of sad decisions that have to be made. Is our child deteriorating so much that we have to intervene, take his or her freedom away, and put them in some kind of residential treatment program or a rehab because they're out of control? That's really a major decision. Is this a good thing? Is it time for us to do it? How do we go about doing it? It's best if the parents are on the same page. In my own life, I can bring up an instance from my own life. When I moved in with my present wife, her children were 6 and 8. They were already in elementary school, and she had made a decision that she wanted to give them the best possible educational start that she could. She herself had been a school teacher before she was married. She was a school teacher in the public school system, and she knew the limitations of a public education for her two children, both of whom were very bright and both of whom were very creative. So she made the sacrifice and paid private school tuition into a very lovely learn by doing private school that really encourages a joy in learning and is really a wonderful, wonderful environment for children. But it was very expensive. We were both getting divorces. We had other children to be supported. I had alimony payments I had to make. The budget of going on with the private school tuition was going to be very heavy on us. And where were we going to take them out of this lovely sequestered place and where they were doing wonderfully and blossoming and so eager to go to school every day and excited about what was happening in school? Were we going to deprive them of that? We had many, many, many conversations, and we came up with a solution. Since I was a product of public school, all the years of my life, even public university, I went to UCLA. I was a big fan of public education. And I said, I managed to get a wonderful public education, even in the public school system. That doesn't rule them out. And we came to the conclusion jointly that when they finished elementary school, we would move them into public school. By then, they had plenty of joy in learning. They had discovered how delicious it was to be a good student. We thought that there would be enough to sustain them in public school that they would rise to the top. They would not go into gang warfare or whatever, or drugs or whatever else was going on in public school. They had enough core already in good sense that that would be the time of transition, and then we wouldn't have to pay tuition anymore for private school, and that's the choice we made. And I think that it worked out very, very well for both of them. Neither of them got damaged by transferring into public school. Uh, the one that came up yesterday, uh, interesting. It links together my two chapters. It is a difference that everybody carries. I hadn't appreciated this sufficiently. I said last time, I think that we're like onions with layers, and with different people, we peel off more and more of the layers, and until with some, certainly, hopefully with the partner, but maybe with one or two others, even the very core last layer of us is transparent and available to them. But when two people couple up to make a relationship with each other, they have different beliefs about their interactions as a couple. That now is part of their stream of consciousness. The things that are wonderful and flowing well with the partner, and the things that are troublesome and problematic and sometimes in need of work with the partner are also there. Then there are relationships with bodies. I have one couple I see that there is a clear rule. He's not allowed to say about anything that's in difficulty in her body to anybody else. Her body is her sanctuary and her privacy. That's not to be a topic of conversation with friends, relatives, neighbors, or anybody else. So there are differences in what should be kept. Well, clearly, things that are really very close to us should be kept private in the relationship. How far out do we have to go to build the wall where we won't talk about that in public? Now, that's a no-no. It's a betrayal of our trust in each other to bring that up in front of other people. That should be sacred to the two of us. Yesterday, my two colleagues here were there because I know them because they are in a consultant group with me. We meet every Thursday. There are 8 of us, and we talk about life. We talk about our knowledge. We talk about our profession. We talk about our clients, anything that we have on our minds. We are free to talk about in that group. And yesterday, one of my other colleagues, who was not part of this activity, brought up a woman she was working with. The woman approached her because she was really restless and dissatisfied with her husband of many years, and she thought it was getting worse. And what she wanted was, she wanted somehow that my colleague would change the husband, even though she was the one that was coming to therapy. The woman had a long list of things that were disappointing about him that needed to be fixed or changed. And so that's always a wonderful, magical enterprise. How is the therapist who isn't there in the home or doesn't hears only the comments that some observer is making about what the other person is doing? How is she to become a change agent for the person who's being asked that she change? What a nice dilemma. At any rate, I began to see by the time we were over, I don't think I expressed myself fully yesterday. I began to see it is quite possible to change the other person, even if the other person isn't there. It requires teaching the person who is there how to respond to the things that are not working or are unpleasant for the person who is there. One of the examples that came up of what's wrong with the husband is the two of them were out for dinner with another couple, and she made some remark to him that sounded like, I didn't get all the details, and as I'm fond of saying, the devil's always in the details. The wife had made some remark at the dinner table in the restaurant in front of the other couple about something the husband had done or was doing that she didn't approve of. And he felt stung and scolded, and he got really angry. He got visibly angry. And among other things, I did hear one phrase he actually uttered. That's what you do. You pull out the whole car file and you throw it at me. And he was saying that in a very loud voice. And I understand that tactic. She may indeed do that when she's unhappy about something. It reminds her of 7 other similar things that he's done on other occasions that she's been unhappy about. And since they've never resolved what to do about any of them, she then pulls them out of the card file and starts throwing them at him too. I know that tactic. It's very common. But what was so upsetting to her was how angry, visibly angry and making noise he was, and that the other couple at the table could hear what was going on, and listening to him now berate her. And as a matter of fact, she reported to my colleague that when she arrived home, an hour or two later, one of the pair who had been at dinner with him called up to find out whether she was all right. because they had gotten a little bit frightened that the husband was even going to get violent. They didn't know. So that clearly is something that requires attention. I'm going to go back this coming week and I'm going to say to my colleague, take hold of that. That is something to work with. That can be changed. The following steps need to be followed. The wife needs to say to him when they get home, please, that was really upsetting. I know I upset you. I don't feel good about upsetting you, but you got really noisy and angry, and both of us together pulled in our friend so and so, and they had to bear witness to our fighting with each other. Which reminds me, I'll go on a small detour. My wife and I had some friends for a while. I played tennis with him regularly, and he suggested we get together socially. So we did. And there was a radio program when I was young, a comedy program called The Bickersons. It was on for half an hour, and all that happened was you listened to an irritable couple bickering with each other about one thing after another. Nothing ever got resolved. They just bickered creatively for 30 minutes once a week. And I loved listening to that program. But most people, we started calling these people the Bickersons. And we didn't like being with them. We would get in the automobile to go down, for instance, to see a play downtown. And he always wanted her to drive. And once she was behind the wheel, he would say, no, no, slow down. He would start yelling at her about it. Drive. No, you need to turn left at the next corner. And she'd say, no, I'm not going that way. I'm going this way. And he'd yell, we'll get there 5 minutes earlier if you go the other way. The whole ride to the damn place we were going was full of them arguing about what the correct driving strategy should be and who was right and wrong. And she was trying to ask him to shut up. And he said, I can't shut up because I don't feel safe with you driving. And it would go on and on. It was very, very unpleasant. And then we would fight about where to park. And then we would fight afterwards about what we thought of the play and whose opinions about what in the play were the correct opinions. Oh, that was exhausting. So I learned that this is the third thing. We need to come to some conclusion about what we're willing to make for transparent to other people. And I'm very indebted to my own wife. She says that it is the responsibility of people who are socializing together to cooperate to provide a nice experience for everyone. The jarring dissonance of what's going on in any of the relationships of the people who are at the table should not be brought up and worked on in public in front of the other people. That doesn't necessarily make for a very comfortable social experience. So that's the third thing I want couples to agree upon, that they will have a clear understanding of what parts of their consciousness is free, or they are free to share, particularly the consciousness of the flow between them with other people, and other people in a public setting. It's different from what might be a close friend that you might say everything to. This has to be worked out and agreed to, because I know that in many relationships, if somebody talks about things that should feel like they should be more private to the partner, that feels very painful to the partner. The partner feels naked and exposed and ashamed and all kinds of complicated feelings that the partner would prefer not to have in the presence of social engagement. Back to my example, I'm going from one topic to the other. What should that wife do about what happened? She should apologize for having criticized him in public. She should say the two of them need an agreement about what's to be done in public and what isn't. Could they work on that? Could they come to a conclusion about what parts of their lives they're willing to share with other people, and what parts of their lives leave them feeling too vulnerable and like they haven't been good guests with the other people and are troubling their guests? And what should be done about his lament? I don't know what his lament was, but that needs to be worked on. What got her to cue him? That has to be discussed, and some way to put that to rest so it doesn't happen over and over again. needs to be arrived at. She needs to be the leader in doing the work because he's obviously not doing it, doesn't know how to do it, or isn't motivated to do it. So somebody has to. And my colleague can try and teach the wife how to become the leader in working with and building better relationships. And my colleague can feed her tactics and lines about things she could say and ways she could address the problems that might lead to a better solution. That's how we can help somebody that we never see. Oh, I like that a lot. I think I'm going to stop at this point. I've said enough about working out arrangements and how decision-making rituals are arrived at, and what kinds are important. The floor is open.
Arthur, I like the concept of like if the husband is good at something and is kind of skillful at it, that he can do the lion's share of that
Yeah.
task or work.
Yeah, and make the lion's share of the decisions involved.
Yeah, and that if he's good with cars or mechanical things or whatever, then it's like that's a great partnership. The wife can do other things that she's
Yes.
good at that he has no interest. Just by the way, it's like tomorrow I'm going to my house and I'm going to wait for the garage door installer to come and put in a new garage door for us. And
Are you going to pick the door?
oh, I did pick the door, but
You picked the
there
door.
weren't very many choices and weren't very many colors. And so it was very kind of easy and simple. The hard thing is that when we had to kind of clear out a space in the garage, where my wife has her entire kind of like 28-year history of our marriage. In some ways, she wasn't going to let me clear it out. So in some ways, we had to do that together.
Yes.
So in some ways and that was the part of the task of kind of like getting the garage door. And so now in some ways I'm greeting the guy and babysitting with the guy and she could care less.
Yes. I'm sure she's relieved you're taking something off her plate that she
Of
doesn't have
course,
to
yeah.
attend to.
Yeah. So it's
That's one of, by the way, what we're talking about is one of the benefits of being paired with somebody. You don't have to do all of everything yourself.
oh, absolutely.
You can take
Yeah.
advantage of the
Mhm.
capabilities and strengths of your partner.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. That's I usually, I guess, you take a word from, I often hear psychopharmacology, but this idea of potentiation, right?
Yes.
1 + 1 isn't 2. 1 + 1 can be 3 or 4.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's the true benefit of coupleness. One of them.
On the other hand, something that's a fused four can be ripped to shreds by a bickering couple.
Yeah.
It turns it now into 4 obnoxious things when it was
Yeah.
a nice smooth 4.
Hmm. I'm just surprised Scott picked the right door. I'm still confused.
There were only
Oh my
two
God.
choices.
If you want to talk,
Okay.
if you want to talk about dysfunctional families, there was a couple I worked with many years ago, and they were into the most terrible kind of interaction pattern. She did not want to decide anything. If he tried to ask her what she wanted about X, Y, or Z, she would tell him, "Well, what do you want?" And and then she'd say that would be okay. But after he would make 90% of the choices about where to go to dinner, what movie to see, on and on, whatever needed to be decided. He would make 90% of the decisions. I guess once in a while, if he wasn't home and some decision had to be made, she might make a decision. But all the rest of the time, he would make the decision, she would go along, and then she would berate him that he made a bad decision. It wasn't you should have known that that wasn't be good.
There's a solution to that. I always just say, guess where are we going to dinner? I say, I've already picked. Just tell me, I'm gonna let you guess. It's a surprise. Guess where I picked. And then whatever the girl says, you say, that's the place. That's where.
No, but she may think you have terrible taste and she may pick something awful because she thinks you're an awful picker.
Then you're doomed.
Oh, I will tell an anecdote about myself. My former wife, I think I've used this before, but I'll use it again now because it's relevant. My former wife did some of this to me too often. She wasn't constantly like that, but frequently. I came home one day, I was tired. I may have been coming down with a cold. I don't think I felt very well. All I wanted to do was have dinner, kiss my kids goodnight, and get in bed and watch some television early. She said, I've gotten a babysitter. I thought we could go out for dinner. And I said, oh, call the babysitter and tell her not to come. We'll pay her anyhow. I don't feel good. She said, oh, I had my heart set on going out to dinner tonight. I said, all right, I have to eat anyhow. Maybe we can go to the Italian restaurant around the corner there because they serve pretty quick and I can probably get back home and get to bed as soon as possible. And she said, do you want to go to the Italian restaurant? I said, yes. She said, oh, no, I thought we would go to the Chinese restaurant. I said, oh, yeah, that's a 10-minute drive from here on top of everything else. And service is very slow. And she said, oh, I had my heart set on going to the Chinese restaurant. All right, we'll go to the Chinese restaurant. We went to the Chinese restaurant as we're getting the fortune cookies. She said, would you like to go to a movie? I said, would I like to go to a movie? I don't want to go to a movie. I want to get home as fast as I can. Oh, it would mean so much to me if we would go to a movie. Couldn't we just go to a movie? Couldn't you just hold it together longer? All right, we'll go to a movie. And then she said, what do you want to see? So I told her what I want to see. She said, no, that's not the movie I want to see. I almost screamed in the restaurant. I was going to scream. Why couldn't you have just said when I come home, I want to go out to dinner. I want to have Chinese food. And then I want to go see this movie. You keep asking me what I want and then you push off against it. That's not the right thing. I'm not a mind reader. I flunked that course in graduate school. Please don't do that to me.
Yeah, that one's infuriating.
Gee, I'm aggravated already.
Yeah.
Now you know why. One of the good reasons I'm not married to her anymore. All right, it's time for me to say goodbye.
Okay.
See you next week.
Have
for
a good
chapter
weekend.
7.
All right. Be
Bye,
well.
guys.
Bye.
We'll see you.